And I would like to say, getting started, thank you, sisters, for coming out in such force. Yeah, maybe next time we should have it in St. Catharine Hall. Yeah, to brave and to walk all the way across campus and everything, to come here to hear something on spirituality is a testament to you guys and what you stand for and what you represent and what we're trying to carry forward in the Religious Studies department today. So I think all of these lectures will be relevant and timely. We don't have to look at the news very long to see we still have this desperate need for spirituality. We still have this desperate need for love. We still have this desperate need for community. And how else to bring it about but talk to one another. Get to know where the other person's coming from, especially about those values that they hold deepest in their heart. So that's what we'll get to today. This whole series of talks is about these values that we hold deepest in our heart and how we can teach these values, how we can learn these values, how we can share these values with one another. So I'd like to start off with just about 30 minutes of silence, please. So just let the dust from the day settle, and we'll take a few moments to close your eyes, relax the body, relax your breathing. Okay, thank you. Our guests today are Tipton and Cheryl Tipton. I'm going to let them tell a little bit of their own story, but they run a place called Acorn Haven here in Kentucky, in Cecilia, Kentucky. And it's a center for teaching Native American spirituality and traditional ceremonies. So please welcome them with a warm round of applause. And we'll get started. Is there anything you guys would like to say to start off?
No, I don't have anything to say. Hey, that's what we came for. I'm going to take the microphone because I don't do very good standing in one place. Yeah, I'm just kind of hard time doing it. And I can pick on Matt because I paid my dues as a college professor. I taught English University of Texas at El Paso for a while. But being a typical college professor, he says, can you come down and talk? And I'm going to send you this list of questions I'm going to ask you. Okay. So I looked over the question, everything was real good. And we get down here, walk in here, and he goes, I changed the list. Here's a new list. So I think he was thinking pop quiz or something like that. And the other thing that I noticed is he was standing up here. I don't know if you noticed, you had me worried. You said, we're going to take about 30 minutes of silence. I'm like, 30 minutes, I'm going to be asleep by then. I don't think he even noticed that, but that's fine. So anyway, we're working off the pop quiz sheet, and after we introduce stuff, you just want me to go over that list of questions? Okay. As he said, my name is Bo Tipton. That is my English name. Native American people, we have an English name and our Native American name. My Native American name is Nidaluak, which is in my first language was from my native people. It was Choctaw, and that means fire bear. You ask a Native American, what is your real name? We'll always give you our Native American name. We have a English name either because somebody in our family married a male who had an English name, or the government gave us one. Now, I don't know if any of you have ever seen the movie about Bury My Heart at Wounded Knee. Charles Eastman in it, and he was given the job of all these books with names in them of giving those native people English names. That was one of his jobs. He was a Lakota Sioux from out west and went up and became a doctor, very well known in Native American history. That was his job. Sit at a book, say, okay, his name is Red Feather, his name is now John Smith. And so it was required. When I started school, you could not use your Native American name in school. You had to have an English name to get to school. Now, my English name comes from up in the Smoky Mountains. There's a place in the Smoky Mountains called Cades Cove. And Cades Cove is, if you go in Cades Cove, it's a one-way road, and you get around on the south side of the road, and there's an old home place that's been restored. It's called the Tipton Home Place. That is where my great-great-grandfather grew up. And he moved to eastern Tennessee, married a Cherokee woman, and then their son married a Choctaw woman. And my tribal membership is to the Choctaw people in Oklahoma, the western Choctaw. Born in little bitty town in Texas, called McCamey, Texas, out on the far out west Texas. Grew up on a cattle ranch out in West Texas. Had blue eyes from an Irish grandmother who came over at 16 years old to visit my grandfather. Well, didn't visit my grandfather, came over with her dad to visit people who were living around a little place called Lubbock, Texas, which was a small town back then. And she met my grandfather, and he was like 25 years older than she was, you know, long family history there. But when Dad got ready to go back to Ireland, she said, I'm staying here, I'm marrying him. So her dad went back to Ireland without her, and she married him, and that's where we get, I get the blue eyes from. I was the lucky one. I come from a very small family. There were 11 of us kids, and out of the 11, I'm the only one that ended up blue eyes. My dad keeps mentioning something about the milkman. I don't know what he's talking about. But out of the 11, I'm the only one that ended up with the blue eyes of my grandmother, which was awful nice because my grandmother treated me different that way. You know, it was special because I had blue eyes. So that's where that came from. My beautiful wife sitting here beside me is born and raised here in Kentucky, and don't misunderstand that, you know, a lot of people have a misconception about Native, about women kind of taking a lower role than what the men do, and that I'm speaking for her. I'm not doing that. She said, you're talking. I'm sitting there. You're doing the talking. She'll get over it in a minute. Anyway, she grew up here in Kentucky, not very far from here, in an area called the Portlands. Yeah, down south of Danville. She is of the Cherokee people. Her granddad did a lot of teaching with her about that. And some way or the other, she ended up hooked up with me, and she's still trying to figure that one out, how that happened. Together, we run a place out 15 miles west of Elizabethtown, Kentucky. They actually say it's in Cecilia, but even Cecilia is 12 miles from it. We run a Native American spiritual center. We do traditional ceremonies. We do traditional teaching out there. We have Sweat Lodge coming up this weekend. We celebrate the solstices and the equinoxes, the change of seasons, because we, people have got away from being connected to Mother Earth, and that's not what we're supposed to be doing. So we celebrate those changes. It's, you know, anybody that knows anything about Native American culture knows about the medicine wheel, and that we travel the circle of life. We do it once a year, and we do it in a lifetime, and that each part of the medicine wheel has a certain energy, a certain thing going on. You know, like in the West, in our lifetime journey around the medicine wheel, it is a time of the middle years. The North is a time of the older, and then it goes to the East, which is the time of the newborn, and starts all over again. And so we celebrate that journey, not only our lifetime journey, but our yearly journey around the medicine wheel. This is the time of harvest. And to us, it is a time of harvest, but it's also a time of going within and spending time with ourselves and see what we have acquired over the, this first part of the year, see what we've learned, see what we need to keep, see what we need to throw away. And so it's a very important time of year for us, so that when we get in the time of the North, the time of rest, because it's cold and you can't do much, and that there are certain things that we do there. So we'll be celebrating that this weekend. I did not grow up in Kentucky. My opinion of Kentucky for many years was really about the Mississippi River. My opinion was anybody east of the Mississippi, I don't know. And if I did, I wouldn't want to. And they were kin to me, I wouldn't claim them. So I'm not going east of Mississippi. And I often wondered if you had to have a passport to go east of Mississippi. Out there, kind of east of the Mississippi, we kind of have a different opinion of it. And about 10 or 12 years ago, I don't like to keep, I'm getting old enough, I don't want to try to keep exact age and let people know how old I am. I was approached by somebody that was living outside Louisville because at that time there were not, and still not, very many ceremonial leaders in this area that were doing ceremonies, doing sweat lodges, doing the solstice and the equinox, doing the heating ceremonies that they didn't exist. A lot of native people here. Kentucky has never claimed them, but they weren't around. So I was asked to come up one summer and spend a couple of weeks up here and do ceremony by some native people. And I said, first off, they said, the way the conversation went was, they said, what do you have to do to get you to come up and do ceremonies? I said, well, in our traditions, tobacco is a very sacred plant to us. And if you ask an elder or a spiritual leader for something, you take tobacco to them. And that's, a way of showing respect to them and asking for something. And they said, oh, okay, well, about 4 or 5 days later, I got a box in the mail that had 10 pounds of tobacco in it. And they said, would you come up and do ceremony for us? And so, we pray about it, everything we do. We very much believe in prayer and getting answers before we do anything. And I prayed about it and ended up coming up here and spending 2 weeks. And that went on for about 4 years. It's 1,400 miles. About 30 hours of driving. I would leave my house and not sleep, drive straight through, and take me about 30 hours to get here. And I spend a couple of weeks, turn around, drive back. And about that time, in my prayer time, I kept hearing, well, you need to go to Kentucky. And I was like, nope, I am a desert person. I grew up in the desert. The desert of the Southwest, that is what I know. Them people up there, they got them big, tall things. I ain't going to Kentucky. And the other thing, some of the things they have in Kentucky that we don't have is, one, we ain't got the ticks out there that y'all got here. Me and them have got very well acquainted. We don't have any cottonmouths. We don't have any copperhead. We don't have any possums. We don't have a lot of those things that y'all have up here. And I was like, no. Well, those of you that follow a spiritual path know that when they tell you to do something, you're going to do it sooner or later. They're going to keep after you till you do it. And that's, I put it off a couple of years and finally ended up moving up here and starting a community. And about July 1st was our 3rd year at Acorn Haven. We were blessed with a piece of property. A piece of property was literally given to us to start a Native American spiritual center here, and we've been doing that there for about 3 years. But I've been coming to Kentucky here for about, I guess about 13, 14 years now. Been living here 10 or 11 years. And it was to try to revive what had been lost, especially among Native people. Now, one of the things about what we believe, this is an important part of our belief, is we believe that walking on the Red Road, it's called the Red Road, does not belong to Native people. It is not ours. We believe that our spiritual belief is based upon Mother Earth and being connected to Mother Earth. And one of our prophecies is that there were 4 brothers. There was the red, the white, the black, and the yellow. And that they separated and went to different parts. And that there would be a time that the other 3 brothers would come back and say, we have lost our contact with Mother Earth. We want to know how to treat her right, how to connect to her, how to use her appropriately. And it depends on the nation you go to. The Hopi people have one prophecy that's very well known, been written about a lot. The Ojibwe have one called the 7th fire. And both of them agree that this is the time that is happening, a return to earth-based spirituality of understanding that we are a part of something, that we are not separate, that we are a part of everything that's around us, that we are connected to everything around us, and a movement to that, and we are seeing that. So what we teach and what we do not feel like it belongs to Native people. All we did was keep it alive. So when the other 3 brothers came back, the teaching was still there. And as I have spent time studying different spiritualities past, and you go to the Orient and go to Europe and into Africa, and we find many things that we have in common. You know, the use of the drum, the use of the rattle, the use of the incense, many of the symbols, they are the same. And we know that is because from that time when they all had that connection to Mother Earth and they went a different direction and lost it. Another important part of Native American spirituality, our belief system, is that we do not believe that we have all the right answers. We believe that there are some other spiritual paths out there. There are good spiritual paths. There's some of them out there that's a bunch of junk, you know. And I can't figure out how they got them things started. People believe that they do, but there's some good spiritual paths out there. So our belief is that everybody, each individual, walks their own path. They have to decide what speaks to their heart. And that's the path they're supposed to walk, whatever spiritual path it is. And so we don't go around, standing on the street corners and saying, if you don't do like we do, you're going to die and get struck by lightning and all that other stuff that some people do. We believe that there are other spiritual paths, and everybody has to find what speaks to them, what speaks to their heart. So that's I'll tell a little bit more about me as we go through these questions that he gave us here, this pop quiz. Comment on the differences and similarities between the different nations in terms of their traditional teachings. Why the underlying similarities? Right?
Can I interrupt you for just a second? Because I've got a sheet of some of these questions. Not enough for everybody to have some, but I've got enough for half of everyone to have some.
Question number 2, do you like Sonic or Burger King better? How much people are going to go eat later? For different nations that are recognized by the federal government. There are 108 that are recognized by state government, but not the federal government. And the last time I checked, there was 64 that had applications in for recognition by the federal government. So we're talking still existing today, over 700 nations. When the guys in the big white boat showed up, the boat with the big white things on them, first showed up, there was estimated there were over 1,200 different nations. Now that is like saying Canada and United States and Mexico and Guatemala and Venezuela and Brazil and Peru, because they're all different nations. What do they have in common? Well, the thing that you find, just like those nations I mentioned, according to where they are geographically, you find that they have many similarities. For instance, the Native Americans that lived on the Northwest, who depended on fish and the ocean and the salmon, had completely different traditions than what they did in the Southeast, where my people were from. But all the people in the Southeast, which were the Creek and the Cherokee and the Seminole and the Choctaw, we did many of the things the same. There was a commonality there. And so by region, you see a difference in the tradition of the Native Americans. But it is physical, because the spiritual traditions that most Native Americans carry, there are many things that are common. We recently had some elders from the Menominee tribe in Wisconsin, Bruce and Shannon, come down to our community and talk to our people. And so they're from, in the middle part of the United States, right up there by the Great Lakes. And they came down without me saying anything to them, not telling them what I want to talk to them about or anything, and came down and spent an afternoon speaking to our people, and our people heard exactly the same thing that they've been hearing from me. There was no difference. None. Not any. So, on the spiritual beliefs of most Native Americans, you will find that the spiritual beliefs are the same. Big misconception. Many people think Native Americans had a bunch of different gods. We never did. The reason that happened was on the East Coast, they come up in a boat, they get off and talk to some people, what's the name of your God? They get a name, they go 50 miles up the coast and ask again and get a different name, but don't realize it's a completely different language. That's why they got a different name. Go up 50 more miles and they get a different name. Oh, they got a whole lot of different gods. Nope. We've always believed that there is one supreme being, whatever people want to call it. We personally, we call the supreme being, creator, because, you know, you read that big black book and it says he created everything, and we honor that, and so to us it is creator. We believe that every person has what we call a spirit guide. Most people call them a guardian angel. Except we accept and embrace the role that the guardian angel, the spirit guide, plays in our life. That they're there if we'll let them to help us and keep us going the right way and kind of keep us out of trouble. We very much believe in what most people call angels, spirits, playing a very important part in our life, and that they have specific jobs that they do, and that they can help us, and we can ask them for help, and that they are there to help us. That is a very important part of our culture. We call them spirits, we don't call them angels, same thing. Most people with Native American culture get caught up in the words we use. Oh, well, we don't believe in spirit, we believe in angels. Well, you have the same thing. And they are a very, very important part. One of the things that, this is kind of interesting being here at St. Catherine. The group of Christian people that understand Native American spirituality the best has always been the Catholic Church. It always has. When I was out west, I used to have two Catholic priests that would come every time we did a sweat lodge, sit in sweat lodge with us. Every time. But the group of Christian people that have understood Native American spirituality, once they studied it and looked at it, has always been the Catholic people. Now, we haven't really liked what some of the Catholic hierarchy has done, but the Catholic people have always been very good and very open to us. And probably one of the biggest things that, the thing that we have in common is that, the Catholic Church embraces the saints. They are ones that lived here, lived a very good life, and they are no longer in physical form, they are in spiritual form, and that they can come back and help people. We believe the same thing. That there are people that live a very good life and do what they're supposed to do, and then they are there for us. If we need help, we can speak to them, and they will help us as long as we're doing what we're supposed to do. We can't say, I want to win the lottery, give me the winning lottery ticket, unless we're going to use it for a good purpose. But very, very much connected to the spirit world in a lot of different ways, and that is common with all Native Americans. Now, as a young man, one of my goals was to attend a ceremony in all 50 states of the United States, and I did that. Well, that was about the time I learned to lead ceremonies, so my next goal was to lead a ceremony in all 50 states, and I did that. And what I am talking about is what I have found all over this country, up into Canada and to Mexico. The very same spiritual beliefs expressed in different ways. Now, ceremonies may be a little different. What we use in the ceremonies may be a little different. For instance, in the Southwest, we use an incense. It's called copal. It is a tree resin that is used in the Catholic churches in that area. Copal is used. You can go over here to Tonini's and buy charcoal that has copal in it. Very common thing. In this area, they use sweetgrass. Well, why did we use copal and they use sweetgrass? We didn't have no sweetgrass. We had copal. Why didn't they use copal up here? They didn't have none. They had sweetgrass. So there's a lot of influence by the region and what your natural resources and stuff were. But the spiritual belief is the same. The physical life is greatly different. The way we dress is different from what it is in what they call the Intermountain region along the coast of California. Our boats were different from what they were up in the Northeast. The physical world was greatly different. The spiritual world is pretty well the same. One of our big things is to find what we have in common with other people and celebrate that. And the differences don't matter. If we can find what we have in common, we can always find a way to care, to help, to nurture other people because of what we have in common. And I spent most of my life looking for that, not only in Native teachings, but elsewhere. How did you begin to walk the path of Native American spirituality, the Red Road? Very interesting question. From the time I was a little bitty boy, I knew that we were Native American, that we were Choctaw. In my home, we spoke Choctaw. My dad was the one that really wanted us to make sure that we knew that language, that we knew we were Native Americans. I grew up on a ranch in West Texas. It was right on the Mexico border. All the workers on that ranch, on my dad's ranch, were from Mexico. My dad had a thing, he wouldn't hire any single men. He'd only hire men that had families so that stay longer, and they would bring their children and go to school with us and stuff while they were working on the ranch. So when I left the house, everybody outside spoke Spanish. So my first two languages were Choctaw and Spanish, and my third language was English. I really didn't start learning good English until I started going to school. But all this time that you're doing that, you learn three languages and just having fun, and you know you're Native American. And we lived about 350 miles from our family, and it was back then it was about, in the early 50s, 350 miles was a long way down two-lane roads. Didn't have all the freeways and stuff, so we maybe go see them once a year, but we still had contact with them. And so I kind of went through life with this idea, of being Native American, what it was, just listening to my dad's stuff. So one day when I was about 14 years old, during the summer, I come home, and my dad says, "Pack your bag, we're leaving tomorrow." I go, "Oh, okay." And we were always leaving to go and sell cattle at sale barns. The closest place we took and sold cattle about 200 miles away. We were always going up there, so I figured that's what we were going to do. So the next morning, we get our suitcases, put in the pickup, we get the pickup, take off. About 250 miles away, San Angelo, Texas. We got San Angelo, Texas. We didn't even slow down. We didn't even stop and get gas. I went, okay, well, we're going to go up to Dallas. Dallas is, right outside Fort Worth, another big sale barn. We got up to Fort Worth, went through Fort Worth, and Dallas hung left. We started going north, and I'm going, I ain't gonna, I like it where we're going. But, okay. So we went up in the southeastern corner of Oklahoma, right outside Duncan, Oklahoma, which is the capital of the Choctaw Nation. Went a couple of miles past Duncan and turned down this dirt road. We went back there, probably 2 or 3 miles, and we pull up in this yard, and there's all kinds of people standing out in the yard. And they ain't got blue eyes like I do. They ain't got light brown hair like I do. And so we get out, and my dad had let them know what was coming. I had no idea where we were. I didn't know who we were. Never met him before. And so we get out and pick up, and he's going up and hugging everybody and being all happy because he hadn't seen them in a while. I'm like, who are these people? So he finally, pulled me aside and said, this is the other side of your family. This is the Choctaw side of your family. This is your granddad's side of the family. Because I had Choctaw on both sides of my family. My mom was Choctaw, my dad Choctaw both. But my granddad, the one that married the Irish woman, was a Choctaw. And it was his side of the family. It was actually his cousin. And his cousin's son. Anyway, so I figured out that they're kinfolks. Okay, that's good. And they had some good food. I mean, they had, they had seen my dad in a long time, never seen me, and they put on a feast that you wouldn't believe. So one thing we do as Native Americans, we feast a lot. So I'm kind of happy. And the next morning we get up, and I wake up, and my dad's over there packing his suitcase. I'm like, okay, it's time to leave. I start packing my suitcase. My dad goes, "Don't pack." Huh? You're staying here. I don't know these people. Well, they're your kinfolks. You know that, I know. I ain't staying here. Yeah, you're right. And about an hour later, he didn't pick up driving off, and I was standing in the yard waving bye with these people I met the afternoon before. Well, come to find out what had happened was my granddad's cousin's son had called my grandmother, a very strong Irish woman, and said, "Your side of the family is losing touch with who they are. So we want you to send one of the grandchildren up here to learn this part of the culture, and preferably a male." Well, all my other cousins lived up around Lubbock, Texas. We lived 350 miles away. My grandmother figured if I went up there, I wouldn't corrupt all the others because I wouldn't be around them that much. So she had called my dad and said, "I want you to take him up there and leave him up there a couple of weeks." And my dad failed to tell me that. Now, my family and our culture is predominantly matriarchal. And if grandmama says something, you did it. My grandmother, what we call going west, losing your physical robe, because in our language there's no word for death. She was 96 years old when she did that, and my dad had 8 brothers, and they were still, in their 60s and 70s, going to get ready to go buy a car and go ask her. It's okay. Going to buy a house, they go ask her. It's okay. That's the type of family I grew up in. So when my grandmother said, "Take him up there," he went, "Okay." Failed to tell me that. Well, that evening, I noticed that there was a bunch of men showed up and a bunch of women showed up, and they went out back, and there was a funny looking thing made out of sticks, and they started throwing blankets on top of it, and somebody built a fire, and to that day I had never heard the word sweat lodge. I can't remember ever hearing it. And so they, you know, and I'm watching them building a fire out there, going out and getting stones and putting them in the fire, and I'm like, cool, wonder what's going on. So in the middle of the afternoon I asked who became what we call our uncle. Our teachers are called our uncles. He became my uncle at a later point. I said, what's going on? He said, don't worry about it, I'll tell you later. Okay. So long about dark, he said, you got some swimming trunks, shorts and things? I said, yeah. Go put them on. So I went and put a pair of swimming trunks and a t-shirt on, come out, and he said, take the t-shirt on. Okay. So we went out with a sweat lodge. He has not said a word to me about what we're doing. And he says, follow me. He goes inside this thing on the ground, I go in behind him. We're sitting there on the ground, I have no idea what's going on. Everybody comes in, he says some things, and said them in Choctaw, didn't even say them in English. And all of a sudden, this guy shows up the door, and he's got a pitchfork with a red rock on it. I mean, it is fire hot red, and I don't have no idea why he's putting that inside that. Well, we're at. My only thing was, is there another door on here somewhere? It's time for me to leave. So they bring him in, they put him in the middle, they close the door, it's totally dark, and they start putting water on those red stones and have not told me a word about what we're doing. I had no idea. I had not even heard the word sweat lodge, and I was in one. That was my introduction to this spiritual side of this path. The physical side I learned as a very young man, but that's 14 years old. And very shortly after that, my uncle, and again, when somebody becomes our teacher, we call him our uncle, he started teaching me, and I've been learning the spiritual side of this path ever since I was 14 years old. So it's been a wonderful journey. I do not regret any of it. Made a tremendous change in my life. Later on I was, however you want to put it, fortunate or unfortunate to do an expense-based vacation to Southeast Asia. And I got a Can't Duck discharge. Can't Duck was, you know, I'm native. Somebody said duck, and I thought they were talking about food, and I stood up. They said, you get too many holes put in you gotta go home. So they sent me home and let me out of the Marine Corps. And then I wanted to do something less dangerous than that, so I rodeoed professionally for about 4 years. Been about 2 years as a rodeo clown professionally. Then wanted to do something a little bit safer than that, so I ended up chasing drug smugglers on the Mexican border for about 12 years, you know, just kept trying to find something safer. And again, I wasn't very good at ducking and got, you know, more than holes in me than I needed, so they told me I couldn't do that anymore. And because of that, being what we would call a warrior, being in things that was very violent, my attitude of life was not that good. And I was in a mainstream church and also learning this at the same time. And I know it was because of this that I was able to get past that. I really didn't like people. Everybody, I thought everybody was crooks. I kept arresting mayors and city councilmen and everything else, all on drugs. Even arrested a sheriff one time from another county, all on drugs. I thought everybody was crooks. And so this path that got me by that. That's why I know it's been a very, very good journey. I'm very grateful to what this has done for me. So I've been here a while. Well, I will tell you this. We live in the country of religious freedom, right? Everybody agree with that? 1890, there was a law passed. Any Native American ceremony was against the law. 1890. That was not repealed until August the 18th, 1978. 27 years old. In my lifetime, my wife, where's the bag at? Has a ceremonial pipe in there. In my lifetime, if we were caught with that, it was a $500 fine. And this is one of the most sacred things that we have, and right in front of you, they would get it out and get a tire tool or something and break it right there in front of you and make you watch, hoping that you would get mad and they could throw you in jail and give you another fine. A sweat lodge, if you were not native, you could do all the sweat lodges you want, because they do them over in Finland, they do them over in Sweden, they do them in other countries. If you're a Native American, you could not go into a sweat lodge. $500 fine in my lifetime. 27 years old when that changed. Sundance, First time, and it was one of the things that brought about this Sundance went underground. It was in Pine Ridge Reservation, 1974. Frank Fool's Crow brought out the first Sundance out in the open again. And it was because of that that kind of pushed to get, because there were people that tried to stop it on legal grounds, and they weren't able to do it. So in August 18, 1978, that Native Americans finally got religious freedom. Now, one of our biggest things, get this, one of our biggest things is what's called a giveaway or potlatch. If we have too much stuff, we call our family together and we give it away. We don't try to keep it. That was illegal. You could not do that because they thought that we weren't accumulating wealth, and because we were not accumulating wealth, we weren't becoming like them like we're supposed to. We were not being, acclimated into the society because we weren't accumulating wealth. So you couldn't give stuff away. As a Native American, you couldn't give stuff away. So what we did it at Christmas. We do it at Christmas. So we'd have these big giveaways at Christmas time. Any other time, it was a $500 fine, and I know people that got fined. And they would confiscate everything there was. Till 1978. So, yeah, been an interesting journey. We still good?
Yeah.
He will talk for a very long time.
We're still on question 1, by the way.
No, we're not.
Okay.
We're on section 2 of question 1.
Okay, gotcha.
What is the role of ceremony in teaching and learning traditional wisdom? How are ceremony and symbol intertwined? We do not do ceremony for Creator. We don't do ceremony for the spirits, the angels, the saints, just as you don't. That's not what you're doing. You're doing it for you. Because when you go into that church building or we go into ceremony, then there is a shift within us. And we're able to open up and to be who we really are, and to listen to Creator, and listen to the spirits. And that's why we do them. But not for them, they're for us. We need them. Like every ceremony, we start with burning white sage, and that smell of white sage, as soon as I smell it, I feel a shift from here to here. And that's what church service is. That's what ceremony is supposed to do. It's what? To shift us. To get us where we need to be, because one of the biggest problems we have in this society today is being still. People do not know how to be still and listen. Many people think that God or Creator is Walmart. This is what I need today, and I need to get some of this, and I need some of that. That's all we know how to do. They don't know how to be still. So ceremony to us is for that. To get ourselves out of our own ways and allow us to be open and allow us to listen. The symbols that we use, there is, as far as symbolology in our ceremonies, there's not that much. There are a lot of what we call sacred instruments. We use a drum. We use a rattle. And one of the things that I find interesting is that even in, you take the big book, the Bible, and look at it, it talks about playing the drum, before the Lord and dancing before the Lord, and we do that. We play the drum and dance, part of our ceremony. Something about our feet touching Mother Earth and that connection that happens there. But ceremony is for us. Sweat lodge. Sweat lodge is our prayer meeting. Pretty much what it is. We go in there and we pray. You go in the sweat lodge, and I start putting water on those red hot stones, and that steam starts coming up and going around you, and you cannot think about anything outside that sweat lodge. Your mind is focused on that sweat lodge. That's what it's for. I mean, you're not thinking about what you're doing tomorrow or what you did going there. All you're thinking about is hot in here. And you were there. And most people who go in the sweat lodge, when they come out, even the new people will tell you it was like nothing else existed but in there. Like everything else was gone. That's our prayer meeting. That's what it's for. And our most important thing that we say about the sweat lodge, it is a time to go in to give to the Spirit, to the angels, Creator, whatever you want to do, the things that you found out that you can't take care of. That you're not strong enough, that you need help with, and give it to them. And say, help me. That's what the sweat lodge is about. Originally, the sweat lodge was a time of purification, clean yourself physically and spiritually. Was done before a ceremony. Currently in the United States, the last census is 4.1 Native Americans in the United States. 22% of them live on reservations around the traditional elders. The other 78% do not. They are detached from their culture. And so some of the bigger ceremonies, it takes a lot of work to put them on. A sweat lodge, you can go out in the morning, cut down the saplings, build a sweat lodge, have a sweat lodge that night, take it back down and leave, and everything be the same. You'll fill the hole back in and everything. Same, do that in one day. So many people that could not do the other ceremonies started doing sweat lodge. And over the last 40 years, it's evolved into a ceremony in its own. And that's what it evolved into, a time of prayer. Vision Quest, traditionally, you go up on the hill, you sit there 4 days, and you don't eat or drink. And Vision Quest is about shutting yourself down. That same thing, getting yourself out of the way. Now, why do people Vision Quest? Well, because they have questions about what they need to do, what direction I need to take, what do I need to do? And we believe, and we were talking about it on the way up here, that each of us have the answer to our questions inside of us. We just have to listen and to bring them out. And Vision Quest does that. Now, the first day you're on Vision Quest, the only thing that you can think about is how hungry and how thirsty you are. By the end of the first day, and you go into the second day, the only thing you can think about is, what in the world am I doing here? I don't need to be here. I don't need this. And we call it coming up against the wall. And on the third day is when you kind of go, okay, I'm here, and then on the fourth day, you're happy all day, but you're fixing to go back down and get some meat. You know, and it's that third day, after you've gone through those other stages, that you're able to look at yourself and to listen and to hear and to understand what it is, the direction that your life needs to take. That's what Vision Quest is for. Now, the reason I know that, in my lifetime, I have probably been on 40 or 50 Vision Quests for 4 days. People say, you can't go up there and not eat and drink for 4 days. Yeah, you can. I've done a 7-day Vision Quest. Spirit takes care of it. Creator takes care of it. Do you get super hungry? No. You really don't. You think about it the first day, but you're not really hungry or thirsty. And then when we do get hungry or thirsty, all we do is take white sage, regular white sage, and you put it in our pipe and smoke it, and the hunger goes away, and the thirst goes away, and that part's not really that bad. Because you're there for a different purpose. You're literally out of the physical world and in the spiritual world. You know? The things in the physical world don't really matter. That's what Vision Quest is. Sundance. Anybody here ever heard of a Sundance? Anybody ever been to a Sundance? Okay. Sundance is where you go out for 4 days, you don't eat or drink, and you dance in the sun. And the men wear skirts. What we do? Yep, we wear skirts. Sundance is all about the people, not about you. Sundance is when you go to Sundance, and the Sundance is off the Great Plains. That's predominantly the area that did the Sundance. Now it's pretty well all over the nation because of what they call the Pan-Indian movement, getting things from here and there and changing them back and forth. But you're out there for 4 days praying for the people. When you're Sundancing, the leaders of the Sundance, because you go out and dance for a while, and you come back down, sit down for a minute, go back out and dance for a while, and do that all day long, and you actually come back for a while and sit down while the people that lead the Sundance can go eat lunch. Literally, they go eat lunch while you're sitting there and you're not eating anything. And then they come back and for 3.5 days they tell you, don't pray for yourself, pray for the people. Don't pray for yourself, pray for the people. Pray for yourself, pray for the people. And every afternoon when they come back from eating lunch, they say, this afternoon, pray for your enemies. Pray for your enemies. In the afternoon, you're supposed to pray for your enemies. And on the last day, the 4th day at noon, they come in and say, okay, now it's time to pray for yourself. So you're out there for 4 days, and on the half of the last day, you get to pray for yourself. Now, if you've seen pictures or heard about the Sundance, you know, the question I always get, well, do they still stick them things in their chest, tie themselves to a tree and do all that stuff? Yes. Yep, I carry the scars from it. I have Sundanced. They take and lay you down on a buffalo robe and grab your skin and pull it up just about like that, And then nowadays they use a scalpel, and they take a scalpel and stick it through from one side till it comes out the other side. And you have a choice of either a piece of wood. I always use a piece of an antler and about the size of a pencil, and they stick it through there and they tie a rope to it, and you got two of them. And then you go out there and you stand there and dance with this rope tied to a tree. And you go back, and if you're smart, you pull against it. And it hurts. Again, you can't think about anything but being right there at Sundance when that thing is tied to you. And you go up to the tree 4 times and you pray. Go up and pray for the people and you come back, and go up and pray for the people and you come back. Go up and pray for the people and come back. Do that 4 times. And then whoever is the Sundance leader will take his fan and he will point his fan at you. And when he does, you're supposed to go backwards, and there's a certain way that you do it. And if you do it with courage and you don't worry about the pain, they will just pop out. If you don't, if you're afraid of it and you're afraid of the pain, we call it bungee cord jumping. And you'll go back and your skin is tougher than you think it is, and it'll flip you forward, and you got to do it again till it comes out. And that's Sundance. Now people go, self-mutilation, why are you doing that? Are you proving how strong you are? What are you doing? The reason that we do that at Sundance is we believe that we have a circle of people around us. Matt and Tanya are part of my circle, a part of my community. So I spend that time praying for them. But many people in our community have things that they need to break away from. Addiction, alcohol, bad relationship, whatever it is, and they have not been able to do it. We believe that if we go to Sundance and we pierce and we break free strong, that they will be able to break free of what they need to. If we are weak and we don't do that strong, then they're going to have trouble doing the same thing. So when we do that piercing and we do that pulling back and popping those things in your chest, we're doing it to help set our people free. And when you go up to get pierced and they lay you down and they start to stand you up, they tell you, they say these words to you: it is time to set your people free. And that's why you do it. Most people have a completely misconception about Sundance, about to prove how tough you are, being strong and everything like that. When I Sundance, I was over 50 years old. I was one of the oldest ones there. Another one of the times where, God goes, I want you to do this. I'm like, man, you got the wrong number. Go call somebody else. I ain't doing that. Took them a long time to convince me to do it. That's what it's about. 4 days. The thing is actually 8 days. We talked about the sweat lodge. You do 4 days of purification before you go into the Sundance. You sweat in the sweat lodge every evening and you help get everything ready. When you do the Sundance, along with that eating and drinking, you do 2 sweat lodges a day. You go in the sweat lodge in the morning before you go dance. You go out and dance all day. And when you get through, the first thing you do is come back and go in the sweat lodge again. Kind of an interesting time. You get some real strong prayers there. Solstice and equinox. We have one coming up Sunday morning. Anybody want to come out at 8 o'clock in the morning? To us, they're a celebration. They're a celebration of the change of season. And we use song, we use dance. It's a very happy time for us. Have a big feast afterwards. I do it just for the feast. But we celebrate those changes, recognize the changes of Mother Earth, and the changes in us. Because, into the summertime, we act different than what we do during the wintertime. There's a change in us. In the springtime, we act different than what we do in the fall time. There's a change in us, and it's a celebration of the changes. Changes of the yearly circle we make around the medicine wheel, and our lifetime circle we make around the medicine wheel. And that's what it is, very important to us. It is the ceremonies that I enjoy the most, is the solstice and the equinox. Very, very important to us. And one of the ceremonies that we have people that come from all different spiritual paths, because, a long time ago, everybody celebrated those times. We should have. We play the drum and we sing and we dance and we just have a good time. Then we get to eat a lot of good food. So that one is coming up Sunday morning at 8 o'clock.
Because we definitely like to follow this, but I'd like to open up a few questions and see if the audience has anything they'd like to ask us.
Are you asking me or are you telling me?
Yeah, is that okay?
Oh yeah, that's fine with me. I thought you were telling me. Okay. Whatever you want, man. Anything anybody like to ask me?
Very good question on the list that I'd like to just ask you real quick, and that's number 5. What is the proper relationship between animals and humans? And I'd like to ask you specifically about, you know, Native Americans have a very strong relationship with a lot of different animals, but one that I feel like is a special relationship is with the horse. And I'm wondering if you could answer that question in the context of horsemanship and horses being in the rodeo and from out west, maybe that might be something you could like.
Have a very special relationship with the horses. If you're from the Great Plains, Lakota called them big dog, because before they came along, they had dogs to help move around, and the horses came along. Horses came to the Native Americans. There were horses in the United States, in this area, a long time ago. They all died out. They say the horses were introduced to the Great Plains when, during the time of the Pueblo revolt, in the late 1600s, out in New Mexico. The Pueblo people drove the Spanish out. They left all the horses. They got taken up, traded on the Great Plains, and that's how they moved up into that area. Other than the Great Plains area, there was not a big relationship with horses. You know, we're from the southeast, very marshy ground. If you have a horse, you're going to spend all your time digging it out. But on the Great Plains, their life depended on it. And when they were able to get the horses, it drastically changed their lives. Instead of from being a group of people that would put wolfskins on and try to drive buffalo off a cliff, they could run up beside buffalo and shoot with a bow and arrow. And so, very, very tremendous relationship on the Great Plains. One of the things that's interesting is the Great Plains, about 25% of Native Americans, is the only area of the United States where it was a patriarchal society. Everybody else was matriarchal. There was only about 25%, I think it's actually 22% of the Native Americans in the United States who were patriarchal. Everybody else was matriarchal. Before anybody else thought of it, women voted. Women were leaders of nations. Women had equal say, equal rights within Native Americans, except out on the Great Plains. And they're still kind of mixed up, and our women still trying to straighten them out. But, and the reason was that the men would leave, and while they were gone, the women would come and be stolen. You know, another nation come on, because it's very taboo to marry any of your relatives. I don't care if you're, you know, 156 cousin. If you have kin to, you can't marry them. And if you're of the same clan, you can't marry them. So many times you have to go steal somebody. So that happened a lot. Well, if in a matriarchal society, the women own the property. If it's a matriarchal society, the men leave, their wife gets stolen, then the wife's family gets all that property. He's left out with nothing. In the matriarchal society, in our society, my wife owns everything. If she gets mad at me and decides to get rid of me, I get to take nothing. Makes me treat her nicer. And the reason for that was most of the other towns, other places, were very stable communities. They were not hunter and gatherer to a great extent, stayed in the same place, and the men would leave to go to war, to go to hunt, and they were the ones that would not come back. Well, if that happened, the women and their children, the guy's family could come and take everything and kick them out. And so they were a matriarchal society to make sure that happened. So the children and the women continued with what they had. But all the horse cultures pretty much were patriarchal societies.
How would they feel about sort of the technology that's at play now in the modern age with artificial insemination, embryo transplant? I mean, how does that relate to the proper relationship between humans and animals?
Human and animal, we believed a long time ago that you could talk to animals. We believe there's certain people that still can talk to animals. Even this culture does. They're called horse whisperers. They still talk to animals. Our relationship, that we believe that we are no better than they are, or no worse than they are. They have equal rights, like we do. As far as technology, you know, I've had people tell me, well, you have a house with air conditioning. A long time ago, your grandfather didn't have air conditioning. If he had an air conditioner, he would have had one. He didn't have one, but he didn't have one. So we are very quick to, you know, embrace technology. Even though I consider myself a traditionalist, you know, I carry an iPhone, got a computer home, and we go to about 40 to 60 elementary schools a year presenting on Native American culture, and the question we always get is, how did you get here? How did you get here? You walked, you ride a horse? No, we came in a car. And so, as far as the interference with you know, artificial insemination, that type of thing, I have never had anybody say, no, you know, that's spiritually wrong. My feeling is I don't like it. It's not part of, you know, the cycle that's supposed to take place. And I grew up in cattle ranch, where a lot of ranchers would do that. My dad never would. But he ran a dairy farm for a long time where they would use artificial insemination. And I've never had an elder tell me that's wrong, but just personally, that's what I feel about it.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
I've always thought that a lot of the spirituality of the Native American was silence. I have memories of seeing pictures or hearing stories of men and women just standing and just not saying anything, even in a group, and I don't know whether that was a ceremony or just, what was the value of silence to the Native American?
Well, it is just like anybody else. If you're talking, you can't listen. And if you're going creator, you ain't listening. And we know that. And so, being silent to us is a very important part of that process. Being still and listening. Now, we do not believe in I said that Sweat Lodge was like a prayer meeting, it is, but in our culture, prayer is 24/7. That you walk in continual prayer. We wake up in the morning, the first thing we do, we walk outside, we take tobacco, put it on the ground. Creator, thank you for letting me wake up. Woke up, a lot of people didn't. And ask him to help us through the day. And that when the day is done, we do the same thing. Thank you for the day. You walk through the day and a beautiful bird flies by. You don't go, oh, look at the bird. You go, thank you for letting me see you. Not only prayer to Creator, but everything that's around us. You go by flowers, and you smell the flowers, and they smell great, and we say, thank you for allowing me to smell them. And so our prayer is 24/7. And it's a hard thing to learn to do, being a state of prayer. And that's where a lot of that silence comes from. Being that state of prayer. She will go into the woods and sit there for hours. Her and her faithful companion named Fire Dog will lay down beside her and sit there for hours, nothing move. But it is not because she's not moving, she's being quiet, she's listening. And you hear all kinds of things, don't you?
I want to ask, do you think a lot of the young Native Americans, are they staying in touch with the culture, or are they becoming, I know this is a general question, but overall, or are they becoming assimilated like everybody else is?
DVD players, Game Boys, televisions, and everything else that's going on is one of our biggest problems in Native American culture. There is great fear among the elders, I'm one of them, that these teachings will die out. In our community, we are lucky. We have several generations, such as the generation sitting here, that have the potential to keep this alive. But it is a problem within Native American communities. Right now, we are losing 3 to 6 languages a year. Because the only ones that speak the language fluently are the older people, and they are dying out. We were asked 2 years ago or a year ago, to go to the Klamath tribe in Oregon and do a workshop for them on Native American spirituality. We went out there to them and asked them, who speaks your language? And they went, nobody. Well, who knows your old stories? Who knows your oral history? Nobody. There's one guy that worked over there at the tribal office. He might know a couple of stories, but that's it.
Can I say something?
You going to say something?
I just wanted
She does speak.
to speak on your question about silence. The Native people are quiet. They don't speak a lot because,
Except for me.
except for him, he talks all the time. And one of the reasons, part of the reason is because, first of all, we believe that if someone is speaking, then you don't. That it is incredibly rude and disrespectful to speak when someone else is speaking. And if you're speaking, you're not listening. And another thing that's important to us is we realize that our words have power. And so you need to be very careful the words that you speak. And if you don't speak good words, or words that have value, you don't want to put that out there because you're creating. Our words create. So you need to be very careful what you're creating. And so it's important that you think about what you speak. And so there's really not a lot of, there's not a lot of things that we need to talk about. I think a lot of things, people are always talking, they're not saying anything, and they're keeping their minds busy because their minds are busy thinking about what they're going to talk about, but they're not really saying anything, and so they're not being connected to here when we're busy up here. And the Native people were spent most of their time here and not up here, and so there's really not a lot of reason to speak a lot in Native culture.
As a spiritual elder and leader, I know that a lot of people talk because if they don't talk, they're going to have to think about themselves and where they're at. And it's a way of avoiding that. A lot of people do that. You had a question?
Agriculture today, and those feedlots and genetic engineering and all that stuff.
Well, since you mentioned feedlots, I'll say this, it's the biggest bunch of BS I've ever heard. I do not like it. They're putting chemicals on Mother Earth to make plants grow. They are planting plants that you cannot take the seeds and replant it the next year. You have to go back to the people that sowed the seed and buy more seeds. So if you don't have money to buy the seeds, people can starve to death because of it, because you can't save your own seed. And I think that at some point, Mother Earth is going to do something about it. And the thing that bothers me the most is the United States is the country that accepts it the most. We have friends in Canada who's part of our community that come down on a regular basis, who she was the lead attorney to get GMO wheat banned from Canada. She's the one that stood up in front of their parliament and talked about it, and we don't like it. I think it's wrong. You know, that is different from artificial insemination. You're not changing things, you're just helping things. And anytime somebody puts chemicals on Mother Earth to make something grow, or you have a feedlot where all that stuff is going into the groundwater, and then we're trying to eat those things that's in, you know, I work in the cattle industry. I know the antibiotics, I know the growth hormones, I know everything else that is happening. You know, I can start a really good argument with this right now, but you have dairy cattle who are constantly getting growth hormones to help them produce more milk, and then you have our young children that are drinking that milk, and we're seeing 10 and 11 and 12 years old children that are all of a sudden they're matured and getting themselves in trouble because of that sudden maturity, and I think it comes from the milk. They're getting pumped full of growth hormones. What do you expect? So yeah, you can get me talking on that real quick. And I do not think it's hopeless, but if we keep our mouth shut, it is. I think that there is potential for change, and if we don't change it, Mother Earth is. She has a tendency to straighten things out. All you have to do is look at New Orleans for how much power she has. She can straighten things out, but it will happen.
Can you talk a little bit about what's going on in some Native communities to speak out and to combat that? I'm thinking about like Winona, Leduc, and seed-saving ventures. Can you talk a little bit about what's going on?
In Native American communities today, biggest problem in Native American communities today is drugs and alcohol.
Oh, I'm sorry, I meant about agriculture. Would you
Oh,
talk about
agriculture.
that too?
Yeah, I thought Native American communities in general. Again, only 22% of Native Americans live on reservation. 78% of them are urbanized, living like we do in, you know, in the country or around villages, whatever. In the desert Southwest is probably where most of the traditional agriculture is still going on. Around the pueblos, they still do it. Don't use the tractors and use, you know, the digging sticks and the old implements and stuff. That's probably the area that has the most of it. Most Native Americans in other areas have moved away from agriculture. About the only area now, if you're in a Kentucky school, they call eastern woodlands everything from the southeast all the way up in the northeast. And you get up, you know, in this level of studying Native Americans in the northeast, they call it the northeast region. In this area around here, eastern woodlands, the only ones that were really big in agriculture were the eastern woodlands, the southeast, and the southwest. Most of them, like around the Great Lakes with the wild rice, they were natural plants that they would harvest. Their agriculture was natural plants that were already there. On the Great Plains, their seed was things that grew there. So probably about half the Native Americans never had a big, big emphasis on agriculture. One of the very interesting things about agriculture I got a bunch of papers that you can hang on the wall, said I spent a lot of time in school because I spent too much time in school. And one of my fields of study was anthropology. I happened to have a master's degree in anthropology. And I found out that a lot of things they say about us was wrong, you know, that they don't even know what they're talking about. But anyway, one of the interesting things that I learned in studying anthropology is that you can trace when corn came to a people, because it came out of Mexico, South America, moved up. You can trace when it came, because before the corn came, the people's skulls were very thick. And after the corn came, the people's skulls would be very thin and have holes in them. And archaeologists, that's how they date the time the corn arrived, is by looking at the skulls. If the skulls are still thick, it was native grasses. If the skulls are thin and have been there long enough, now they got holes in them and stuff, people were eating corn. And that's literally how they date it. And now we're taking and modifying corn even further. It's going to be real good for us.
I'd like to ask a question about entering into the woods and just what the proper attitude is upon entering into the woods, what we can expect to find there. I mean, it seems like that is we're losing so much. I mean, hardly any old growth forest in this state, you know, from the original forest. We're losing so much. It seems like we have lost sight of the value of woods, mature woods. I was just wondering if you could speak to that a little bit. And also just the experience, you know, when we enter into these woods, what are we walking into? What are we entering into?
I like that question, I thought on that. We believe everything has a spirit. Everything is connected. We are connected to the trees are connected to us. In our place, we have about 15 acres that are wooded, and there's a path that goes into it, and there's a certain point, there's two trees. There's a tree that has forks and comes down to one, and there's another tree on this side, everybody knows. That when you walk into those woods, you stop right there, and you pray before you go in. You let them know why you're coming, what you're going to do in there. And we believe that you find, when you go into the wood, you're going to find exactly what you expect. What you're going to find. You go in there expecting to feel nothing, you're going to feel nothing. You go in there and expect you'll go hungry, you're going to go hungry. You go in there and expect for them to speak to you and to feel close to them, that's what's going to happen. And we feel that whatever you expect to get when you go in there, that's what you're going to get. But we go in, we always go in prayer. Can't go in there until you pray. Before you go into the woods, anywhere. Now, this one I know she will talk about a little bit because this is the wood queen. I mean, she'll go out in the yard and then she'll disappear on me and come back 2 hours later and say, I couldn't help it, the woods sucked me in. They just drew me in there and I couldn't get away from them. So you want to talk about that?
Just briefly, on this, in the way that we believe that everything that is alive, that it has a spirit, it has a medicine. And it's here, Creator put it here for a very specific reason. And that was to teach us and to help us. And that we are no better than anything else that is in creation. We're just a part of it. And so, Matt, when I step into the woods, I feel that it is my place to, when I enter the woods, to stop and acknowledge, because I'm stepping into their space. And so I always ask, and I let them know, and I bring the gift of tobacco so that they know that I've come in a good way, that I'm coming just to spend time with them and to share their space, and that I have a good heart, and that I'm open and I want to listen and learn. And so I do that, and I go into the woods, and I listen, and I learn, and I be still. Because, like I say, everything in creation has a medicine that can help us, and is a teacher for us. We can learn many things from the trees. We can learn many things from all the things that are in the woods. If you just go and sit and be still and listen, and open your heart. And when you do that, and then you're able to connect to that energy flow. Because there's an energy flow that we're all a part of if we're connected to it. But when we're busy, I think that one of the things that's so hard for people now is they're so disconnected from the natural world. Because we weren't created to be disconnected from the natural world. We were created to be a part of it and be connected to it. And our culture, sadly, is so completely disconnected from the natural world. That's why we're sick. That's why we're sick in our minds and our bodies and our hearts, is because we are so disconnected from the natural world that we were created to be a part of and be in relationship with and be connected to. And so to me, that's what I find when I go to the woods. And I think that that's what every human can find, that it's there for all of us. It's part of our creation. It's who we are. It's being in balance with our creation, is spending time to do that and to acknowledge that that's who and what we are, is that we're a part of it and that we need to connect to it and we need to learn from it. You know, all the plant people have things to teach us and they're medicine for us. There's so much that you can learn from the tree, from the birds, from the little creepy crawlies. It's amazing. And so we live in a culture that spends very little time even acknowledging the natural world. And it is in my heart that that's why we're so sick and we're so sad and we're not happy. And so it's important.
And she knows the wood. And give you an example. You know, a lot of people right now are suffering from sinuses. It's pretty common, you know, hay fever and stuff. I'm sitting here drinking what's called Navajo tea. It's a natural antihistamine. I don't have to take contact when I'm taking that. Just sit here and drink a warm tea and it all goes away. And everything's out there that we need. We just learn what it is. And a very, does, you know, better than all them pills and stuff that you take. You don't have all the side effects. Sit here and
Younger Native Americans that are losing touch with the traditions, do you find that that they're just not familiar with them, or this is going to sound like an unusual question, or do they treat them with contempt as though these are old-fashioned beliefs that don't belong in modern society?
80% of Native Americans, pretty well across the board, are part of a mainstream church. 20% pretty well across the board are what is called traditional planting. Of that 80%, about half of them do both. Go to a mainstream church and take part in the ceremony. Traditional elders in many reservations, I had the opportunity to go to the Grand Canyon, what's called Grand Canyon West, which the Wallapai Nation, they had Japanese, Chinese guy come in and put this horseshoe, glass horseshoe out over the Grand Canyon. And all of a sudden they had all these tourists, they hired me to go out there and tell stories and play the flute. They do not have any traditional medicine people left. They have all died. And so one of the struggles is finding people that can teach them the traditions. The other thing is, many of the nations, like Pine Ridge, which is the poorest place in the United States, there is an 80% alcohol or drug addiction rate. Well, if 80% of the people you're surrounded with are alcoholics or drug addicts, kind of hard to do the traditional teaching. So that is the biggest barrier for the young people, is having access to traditional people. That's the biggest barrier. We went to the Klamath Nation. We talked to the man that was in charge. He was the head of the Council of Elders. And his question to us was, how can we get the young people to listen to us in that nation?
Well, what did you say to them?
Well, they have a very good program out there that is for people that have been drug and alcohol. They're trying to do something about it. And so our suggestion to them was, you know, they are going to this program that they're supervised, kind of like the drug court here in Kentucky. And my big suggestion to them was, go to the judges and tell them to assign that person to an elder, that they have to spend a certain amount of time with that elder as part of their recovery, whatever. And they really like that idea. And, you know, then you've got the one who are most problem doing that, and it changes people. It does. You all know that when you get somebody on a spiritual path, it changes people. It does. And then they see that happening with those, and then they open up to it. And but the biggest problem in Native American communities is access to elders. You know, up here, there wasn't anybody. Now there's 4 or 5 of us up here that are teaching, but back then, when I first came up, there wasn't anybody.
One more question. Why is tobacco such an important, or of such importance to you?
There is a story, a lot, and almost, you know, our origin stories. There's a story of how the corn came to the Choctaw people, and then about the same time that the woman, and that, you know, this all stuff comes from women. One of the questions was, are there specific roles for men and women? No, there are no gender-specific roles. Men can do anything that women do anything that men do. There are, you know, physical roles that they do, like we believe that the women in charge of physical space, men in charge of spiritual space. Men are the guardians of the physical space. The women are the guardians of the spiritual space, the ones that make sure that, you know, the crazy guys are doing what they're supposed to do spiritually and not going out and left field type thing. You know, those types of roles, but as far as gender specific, but most of our stories, we get our things from women. And the story is about Mother Earth, which she came and gave the corn to some hunters and told them to come back. And they're supposed to come back at the next full moon, and that there was a plant there, which was tobacco, and she told them, if you take this plant and you offer this plant every time you want to express gratitude. And that's what tobacco was for. So every time we use tobacco in our pipes, and like she uses, a lot of people call it connect. It's a mix of herbs. She uses a lot of rose and lavender and chamomile and things with just a little bit of tobacco in it. And but it is a way of showing gratitude in our teachings. That's why it's so important to us. We believe that people are getting sick from using tobacco because they're using a sacred plant. You know, it's like walking in church and peeing in church. You know, something bad's going to happen, and that's why that is happening. And now, also, if you think about it, tobacco grows in the southeast region, never grew anyplace else. So for you to have tobacco out on the Great Plains a long time ago, that had to travel a long ways. And it was very hard to get. So it was even more precious than gold. That's why when the mountain men went out there, they'd find out for a small bag of tobacco, they could get 20 buffalo hides and it just surprised them. Well, out there it's hard to get. And so part of that tradition is that it's very hard to get. And we still think that people grow tobacco are very special if they do it right, because it's a sacred plant. But it's a way of saying, every time, we will not pick up a feather without putting tobacco down. We will not pick an ear of corn without putting tobacco down. We will not take a tomato without putting tobacco down first. To say thank you to that plant for the gift, to the bird that left the feathers flown off. Thank you for that gift.
When I plant my seeds in the spring, I offer tobacco to Mother Earth and ask and pray Mother Earth to, along with me, to give me what I need to help nurture that plant. And I'll just give that tobacco. And so it's a very, very sacred plant to us, and we feel that people who smoke cigarettes, that's abusing a very, very sacred plant. That's why they get sick. It's because they're abusing it. It's not being used in a good way. Very sacred plant to us, and showing gratitude to Mother Earth.
One last question I want to answer. This is the very last one on the list. What role does service to others play in the life of medicine man and women? On that first list you gave, you talked about the 4 pillars. And I was going, oh, that's Native, oh, that's Native, that's Native, that's Native. And we believe that you are here for 2 reasons. You're breathing air right now for 2 reasons. One is to learn, and the other is to help other people, to serve. That's why we're here. This is a classroom. We're here to learn. We're here to learn how to love. We're here to learn how to take care of people. When there are things that we needed to learn, that's why we came here. We're volunteers for it. But while we're here, we're to serve other people. Not only medicine men and medicine women, but everybody. That is your purpose in life. People go, what's my purpose in life? To help other people. Help other people. One of our core beliefs. That everybody is here to learn, but to be in service, to help other people. And that you will never find happiness, you will never find the connection that you need, the spiritual connection that you need, until you're willing to do that. Until you're willing to let go of, I'm more important than somebody else. And that's what our whole community is built about service, about helping other people. Anybody else have a last question? I like your necklaces.
Thank you. It's Lakota soup,
Mm-hmm.
a pine root.
Yeah, you can tell by the beadwork where it comes from.
That's right.
Yep. Different designs from different parts of the country.
I want to say one last thing. Please, I don't get emotional. I just wanted to say thank you, sisters, for coming In our culture, our elders and our children are the most valuable things that we have, and elders are held in great esteem and respect. And it has been an honor for me, it almost brings me to tears, to see you all come and sit and share and give us your time. Because time is the most precious gift that we can give. And thank you for your time. It's been an honor and a blessing for me. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for your time.
I think Bo and Cheryl give us a sense of the incredible resource and wisdom that is there in these native cultures. And so much of it has not been treated with respect and honored the way that it should be. So thank you guys for coming out today and honoring them. And thank you guys for honoring us with your wisdom and your presence and your humor. I know you've touched my life personally, and a lot of the students that have had you brought to you, you've touched them. So very grateful for you guys to be here. Okay. And we'll be hanging out for a little bit after the talk. So if you have any question that was a private question rather than a public question, maybe you can grab their ear for a second. Thank you guys again.